All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, as I watch this whole Eric Reid narrative transpire over the course of this past NFL season, it's become more and more apparent that, of course, it's a valid statement or a valid allegation that the NFL does not want him, nor does it ever want Colin Kaepernick to return to the league. And I honestly don't think that that's the real question. The real question is, should the NFL want them in the league? Would having Eric Reid or Colin Kaepernick in the NFL be good for their bottom line? Of course, in my view, the answer is no. As I've stated numerous times in reference to this issue, and wokety wokes like Colin Kaepernick, or at least Colin Kaepernick alleged to be wokety woke, for brothers who follow my perspective on his entire storyline, I believe that he's a plant in the NFL, a Marxist plant, and a monarch athlete. But that's neither here nor there. The point being is this. There's no doubt in my mind that Eric Reid is under the spell of Colin Kaepernick, that he is an ardent member of Colin Kaepernick's cult of personality. The NFL understands that, and they know that basically the only reason why he's been let back into the league is because the new owner of the Carolina Panthers is going to act as the middleman between certain Marxist international forces and the league, because they want to use the NFL as a staging point to socially engineer society. Once again, the NFL is not a woke league. They're trying to make it more woke, but it's not as woke as the NBA is. And they want to make the NFL more woke. They want to utilize the NFL to promote things like feminism and homosexuality, transgenderism, etc. And right now they really can't do that because you associate the NFL with masculinity. And there is definitely a war on men and on manhood in this society, in the quote-unquote Western world. Eric Reid does not understand that. He thinks that he's just down for the cause and he's trying to push for the pro-blackity-black, wokety-woke agenda. But at the end of the day, when you notice people like Eric Reid or Colin Kaepernick or most of the pro-blackity-black Luciferians, you'll also notice that they tend to be globalists, that they tend to be what they call super progressives. You know, they also want to cape up or champion the cause of the homosexuals and so-called oppressed women, things of that nature. Let me say this. It's never good to oppress certain groups or demographics for the sake of your own malicious intent or for your own sadistic intent. But there are rules and regulations, and you have to understand that the things that people do or that they adhere to, what they believe in, are going to have consequences, repercussions, reverberations if you don't keep things under control. There's a reason why certain demographics were given certain roles, and certain adherences or belief systems or life choices have been demonized throughout history. I say all that to say this. It's very clear that they want Eric Reid out, and I believe that they should, because if they don't, he's only going to ratchet up the amount of chaos that he intends to cause. I promise you that. And he's not in control of what he's doing. He might not understand that, but Colin Kaepernick is piloting him from behind the scenes. I have no doubt about that. That's why I also state that I believe that Kaepernick is the person who sicked him on Malcolm Jenkins right before the Carolina Panthers played against the Philadelphia Eagles. I have no doubt about that. So Eric Reid is stating that he feels like he's being targeted by the NFL's drug policy. They're trying to catch him using performance-enhancing drugs because they want him out. So the question would be this. If the NFL does want Eric Reid out, and I agree with him, I believe him that they do, why would they be trying to focus on the performance-enhancing drug aspect unless they've heard something in the past? Unless they know something about Eric Reid? Anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Elsewhere, in the latest controversy surrounding Eric Reid in the NFL, the Panthers safety was randomly selected for a drug test after the loss to New Orleans on Monday night. Keep in mind, it is his 7th test in just 11 weeks since signing with Carolina. It's important to remember that Reid was the first player to kneel alongside Colin Kaepernick during the national anthem. Reid tweeting this pic with the caption, "Number 7, random." Max?
Yes.
Start with you on this one. What is going on here?
Not obvious to everyone?
Yes, it is very obvious. The NFL's trying to catch him using some type of performance-enhancing drug. The issue is that if you're Eric Reid, why are you concerned with this? Unless you're wokety woke, meaning you think that you could say whatever you want about anybody else, but there should not be any repercussions. Why would you think that? Of course, there are going to be repercussions when you speak out in any way, whether you're right or you're wrong. the powers that be that you're speaking against, whether they're in the right or they're in the wrong, are going to try to silence you.
No.
I want to quote a few people.
Okay.
My father used to tell me, if you hear hoofbeats in North America, don't rule out zebras, but think horses first. Okay? And my professor of mine at college, Professor Helfand, shout out Professor Helfand, used to teach a course called Scientific Habits of the Mind, and would talk about the idea that unlikely things happen all the time. People get struck by lightning. It's a 1 in a million chance. That said, there is to be tested randomly 6 times in 11 tries, given the number of players tested, etc., there's a 1 in 13,889 chance. 1 out of 13,889. My math is correct. And yet it happened to Eric Reid. And it'd be one thing if it just happened to some guy, because as I said, unlikely things happen all the time. But a guy who had a collusion case, a guy who knelt and who's seen as the social justice guy, for that guy to be the 1 in 13,000 something chance. Muhammad Ali, when he converted to the Nation of Islam in this country and made some comments that conservatives in the 1960s didn't like, his draft status, he was reclassified from like 1F or whatever it was to 1A.
Yeah, I think that he was actually 1Y, and they reclassified him to 1A. But that was very, very blatant what they did with Ali. What they're doing with Eric Reid is also blatant, but it is within the NFL's collective bargaining agreement.
And all of a sudden they wanted him to be in the armed forces. And it was calculated at the time that the odds that happened randomly were 1 in 100,000. Why? Because Muhammad Ali was obviously targeted by the government. And here, it is pretty clear mathematically, it looks like anyway.
Also notice that Max Kellerman is doing something that I've stated to you, brothers. The super liberal Caucasian Jew on television will oftentimes try to do for their pawns, which is they'll try to align them to Muhammad Ali. Now, they've been trying to do this with Kaepernick for the last few months, but now they're trying to do this with Eric Reid, who we know has a connection to Kaepernick, to make people think that they're all part of the same quote unquote fight the power conglomerate. So associate Eric Reid with Colin Kaepernick, with Muhammad Ali, with LeBron James.
That Reid is being targeted by a supposedly random test. And Stephen A., I have read recently that one of the ways to go about proving that that's the case is to see if there are digital footprints left that show that someone overrode the algorithm that selects the random players to be tested. Let me just say, I hope they go forward with this. I hope they find whoever overrode it, because it seems very, very likely to me that someone did. I hope that person is punished. I hope the league, to me this is beyond a civil thing, to me this kind of abuse of power, my gut tells me jail time should be involved. But
well, that's normally what emotionally unstable people say. They talk about what their gut tells them, as opposed to what the law or the policy should tell them. That's why people like Max Kellerman should not be involved in anything legislative, administrative, or judicial, because they go according to their quote-unquote gut. If the worst problem that Eric Reid has is that he's getting quote-unquote randomly drug tested while getting paid 7 figures a year, or however much he's getting paid per season to play NFL football, there are people with worse problems than him. He's living a pretty good life. At the end of the day, he should have expected this. I don't think that what the NFL is doing is any more egregious than what Eric Reid tried to do to Malcolm Jenkins that day right before their game.
But I understand maybe that's a severe reaction. Maybe we're just talking about some kind of civil penalty. But that's how infuriated I am by the idea of this kind of abuse of power.
Well, let's be clear, or let's be very, very clear, as Stephen A. Smith would say. If there is any tampering found in the way in which the NFL is able to generate who they're going to test for drugs, performance-enhancing drugs, of course, not only would the person who changed the algorithm be punished, but the NFL probably could also be sued civilly by Eric Reid and his team. So that's what you're hoping for. You hope that you can find something like that.
To exact retribution. I really dislike it.
Well, my response to you is be very, very happy that you're not a black man, because my initial response is, Are we surprised? I mean, this is being black in America, brother. I'm here to tell you that right now.
Well, let me say this. Let me say this very quickly. We all know as so-called black men that we are placed under a heavy amount of scrutiny. But once again, as I've always stated, we're behind enemy lines. This is not our rest. If we want to be viewed on a different level, we should have our own. That's what our focus should be, is having our own. And detaching from the wants of acceptance in this society. But that's a whole other issue. That's a whole other video for another day. I'm not quite sure if Stephen A. Smith should be pulling the quote-unquote race card for this story, especially since the NFL is 70% so-called black. So the issue in regards to why they're highlighting Eric Reid is not because of his so-called race or his quote-unquote skin color, but because of his ideologies. That's the real reason why he's being pinpointed and scrutinized.
This is why I'm looking at it, and I have a relatively nonchalant attitude towards it compared to you, Max Kellerman.
I agree, sir.
Kellerman, I completely 1,000% agree with everything you just said.
Well, for the most part, I have to agree with Kellerman as well because he stated mostly facts, but I don't agree with the emotional aspect of what he was saying.
Not a single syllable that came out of your mouth I disagree with. I get exactly where you're coming from. But my response would also be, and so what? You didn't know this was coming, Eric Reid?
Thank you, sir.
So let me get this straight. You take a knee, you protest. All right? Obviously, what's the residual impact of that? We know how grotesquely unfair it was. We know how the issue was changed. We know how the issue was hijacked.
No, the issue was not changed or hijacked. The problem is that neither Eric Reid nor Colin Kaepernick had the gumption or the bravery to actually speak about what they claimed their platform was because they had no end game. So they decided that they were going to stage a quote-unquote protest, meaning attention monger, in hopes that the good white man would give them a hug. That's really what this whole thing has always been about. And most pro-blackity black wokety wokes, that's really all they're about, is trying to get a hug from the white man.
By the President of the United States, we get all of that. So what happens thereafter? After that, you file a collusion case against the National Football League. In the midst of filing the collusion case or having the collusion case while looking for an NFL job, you tell teams you will not guarantee them you will not kneel. Then you turn around, you go to Carolina, you still take a knee. And you're surprised that this drug test, that you're being inconvenienced this way. And by the way, it was 6 times, not 7 times. Even though it's 7 times overall, the bottom line is the first test you have to take once you get to a new team. Performance-enhancing drug test, substance abuse test, that kind of thing. So that's a given.
Right, but is that really a given, Stephen A. Smith? Remember, he's Eric Reid. He should not have to be drug tested ever because that goes against his human rights as the descendant of slaves. Why should I have to be drug tested like all these other people? I'm the descendant of slaves. You owe me so that I should be able to get out on the field without having to go through any of these provisions. Who are you to talk to me like this? I'm Eric Reid. I'm here to solve the world's race problems. You know, one knee at a time.
But here's the deal, y'all. The fact of the matter is that who didn't know this was coming?
Thank you, sir.
It's so predictable, it's laughable. And oh, by the
That's like you being a so-called quote-unquote community activist and trying to have laws change in your state or in your city or in the country. And then saying, you know, every time I drive down the street, the police are pulling me over. Well, no shit. What did you think was going to happen? That's par for the course.
By the way, you know what makes it even more laughable? That even Eric Reid would tweet about this? The Players Association signed off on it. The computer system, the process, they collectively negotiated this, giving the NFL the power to do this. And so whatever computer system, the algorithms, all of the stuff that you brought up that we've been reading about, Max, the players are fully aware of it because the Players Association is aware of it. When players complained about it in the past, I don't know whether it was Odell Beckham Jr., James Harrison, or somebody else, but when they complained about it in the past, the Players Association actually said to the players, well, there's nothing wrong with the methods. There's nothing wrong with the process because they collectively bargained for it. They agreed to this. So if you're the National Football League and you know this, then you're Eric Reid, who's smart, highly.
And I mean, according to the testing procedure, it says here you have been randomly selected by the NFL Drug Testing Program's medical advisor to complete a urine doping test today. So they're not even taking blood. If all you got to do is piss in the cup, like, I mean, this is what I mean when I talk about these professional athletes. This is why they're very ill-equipped to speak for society at large, because they come off like a bunch of whiners and a bunch of big babies. Big fucking deal, you got to piss in the cup. You know what? They should be testing all these guys every week. That's what they should be doing.
Highly intelligent, very conscientious, obviously, and somebody as a black man we should all be proud of. Let's also not walk around with blinders on, acting like we're surprised by what's transpiring.
Well, Stephen A. Smith, what exactly makes Eric Reid highly intelligent? Please let me know about that one.
You knew what the hell was coming. This is par for the course.
Well,
I'm not surprised at all.
I agree with that. But beyond that, Stephen A. Smith, once again, you have to prove to me that he's highly intelligent, because if he was, he should not be surprised about what he's being, quote unquote, put through. You know, this stressful situation that he's being put through, where he has to pee in a cup after a game.
Not even a little bit.
I want to engage with the point you make along racial lines. You said, Max, as a black man in America, you, Stephen A., are not surprised. You say so. And what I say as a
super liberal Caucasian Jew, you can say it. Say it, Max Kellerman, as a super liberal Caucasian Jew.
As a person, as a human being, who would like all people to be treated with dignity.
Allegedly.
I would say, and this goes along the lines of white privilege, how we've discussed this and debated this as it relates to the process in Philadelphia. You say no black GM would be able to get away with that. And my point is not that white people should give up their privilege. It's that we should all insist that everyone is so privileged, that everyone...
In other words, Max Kellerman, you want to stay living on the penthouse, and you want to convince the people who are living on the bottom floor that they should deserve the right, or they should think that you want them to have the right to live on the penthouse floor with you, even though there are only so many apartments available on the penthouse floor. So in other words, you're disingenuous, as we already knew. If you're truly that concerned about everybody being quote unquote equal, go to your bank account, find the first so-called black man you can find on the street, and live out a real life version of the film Trading Places. And let's see what happens. All the smiggity smack talk and you know, the long-winded rhetoric I'm tired of from the super liberal Caucasians, especially the super liberal Caucasian Jews. All they do is put a battery in the back of so-called black people every day with their alleged guilt and supposedly their sense of righteousness.
Everyone.
We just heard Max Kellerman say that he does not believe that white people should give up on their privilege. So how could you believe that you should be able to maintain your privilege as a Caucasian man, but then tell so-called black people that you're fighting for them? That's not possible, sir.
Everyone is treated, hold on, with respect and dignity. Yeah, no, right. What I would say is this. I understand your point. In other words, there have been so many injustices against African Americans in this country that if every time one came up, black people got indignant, they'd be indignant all the time.
There's nothing wrong with being indignant. The point of being indignant, though, is that you're seeking after a solution so that you're not perpetually, quote unquote, indignant. Because what indignance is righteous anger. That's basically the definition of being indignant, that you're righteously angry. Now, when you want to perpetuate anger after a while, perpetual anger has a deleterious effect on your body, on your mind, on your spirit, because you're not seeking after the solution. If something outrageous was done to you or your family, you're going to have to do something about it. Either you're going to have to do something about it as an individual, or you have to seek out law enforcement to do something about it. But you just can't sit there in the middle of the room and say, oh, this person, you know, sexually assaulted my mother. I can't believe it. And you're just there sitting there in the middle of your living room for 2 weeks doing that. You're going to lose your mind. Either you have to do something about it, or law enforcement has to do something about it, so that a resolution can be found to the situation.
And my point is, the attitude can never be so. If you must be indignant all the time, then so be it. But I would say to white.
See, that's more of the super liberal Caucasian programming. And do you see how he's speaking at Stephen A. Smith? He's not really speaking to him or with him. He's speaking at him. He's letting him know this is what you're supposed to think.
White people in that case. Don't leave that up to just a subset of your fellow Americans and human beings. We should all be indignant. We should all accept that responsibility. We should all accept part of that burden.
Let me say this very quickly. Many Luciferian blacks will hear a speech like this and they'll feel galvanized. They'll be so happy. Wow, there's a Caucasian man who really loves me and cares about me. And when they get caught up in that spell, that takes them away from what their essential motivation should be, which is how can we improve our condition without worrying about what these other races have intended for us or what they want for us. When we stop worrying about what these other races think or how they feel about our condition, and we start being more concerned about what we need to do, then we can focus and we can solve the problems that we can solve. And then once that's done, then we can start to concentrate on these other people and how to handle some of the exterior energies that are being pushed upon us to cause problems. But we have to focus on what we can do first. The little things become big things. Right? Little solutions lead up to big solutions. But we have to start there first. That's why I don't come on my channel talking about, all these white people and all this. Look, the white man is an issue, but at the end of the day, so-called black man, we make a lot of bad decisions, man. We do a lot of things that we can resolve. And once we resolve that, it's going to clear our head so that we can go about solving a lot of these other problems as well. When we see a lot of these so-called angry black dudes, what most of them have in common is that, to be quite frank with you, most of them think like a chick on her menstrual. And they act like a chick on her menstrual.
I am indignant every time I see this kind of a miscarriage of justice against another human being. And that includes against black people where it's happened a lot to them.
Well, first of all, let me say this to my brother from another mother. I appreciate where you're coming from. I'm thankful for your position, sincerely and truly. Trust me.
Allegedly.
Trust me when I say this. And I'm speaking on behalf of what I imagine.
You can only speak on behalf of your damn self. Speak for yourself.
Imagine to be millions upon millions of black people throughout this nation to hear you say what you just said. I thank you for it. But it's incredibly imperative that you understand that as a black person, as a black man, we can ill afford to be indignant all the time.
You're right.
I agree, sir, because that takes you away from what you should be focused on. Anytime you're trying to get something accomplished, if you're motivated by carnal emotions, oftentimes it's not going to turn out well. If you're trying to get with a female purely out of carnality, most of the time it's not going to turn out well. If you want revenge on someone out of pure carnality, it's not going to turn out well for the most part. We have to think things out.
Right.
Even though it's justified, the fact of the matter is that if we were to act that way, then guess what? We're on a fast track to purgatory. Yep. We're on a fast track to nowhere. The reason why is because the system is designed to work against us, to keep us marginalized, pigeonholed, and minimized.
Well, the main thing that the system is designed to do is to keep you ignorant of who you actually are. When you don't know who you actually are, then you don't know how to conduct yourself. Like, I get a lot of pro-blackity black dudes, they get mad when I mention the Bible. they use terms like common sense. That's why I asked them, if you have so much common sense, why have you not found your own state, your own country to build up from? Why are you still here? If the white man is the worst thing since sliced bread and you have so much understanding of how things are supposed to go, why are you still here? Because you have not started the revolution yet. And you have not repatriated back to whatever African country you allege to be from. But oh wait, you don't allege to be from an African country because you've done none of the research about where your tribal origins go back to. So really, the real reason why you're trying to castigate the Bible is because you're an agent of chaos. You prefer disorder. You can hide there and basically try to create your own false reality as long as you don't commit to anything.
Specifically because of that reason. So you see people trying to exacerbate black folks all the time, doing stuff that they know
really aggravate.
Good and damn well is wrong, hoping that you will react the way Max Kellerman thinks is the right thing to do.
And let me say this very quickly, especially in the corporate workforce. As a so-called black man, you're going to encounter people who are always going to try to aggravate you in some way. Or, dare I say, even try to step on you in some way. And it won't always be a so-called Caucasian. It might be a simple ass so-called black man who's acting as, a pawn or intermediary. Sometimes in the workplace, people of other races will send a simple ass black man over to try to talk to you to see if they can get you to divulge certain information about yourself. or many of these lonely ass liberal black women will try to start shit with you in the white man's workplace because they look at you and they think about the daddy they never knew or the boyfriend that left them. That's what they think about when they look at you in the workplace, so-called black man. A lot of you guys try to figure out how come the so-called black woman gives you a hard time in the workplace, because they think emotionally, man. When they look at you, they think about all their failed relationships. Or once again, they think about the dad they never knew. So that's why I always say corporate America is not for the so-called black man. All you brothers should be working towards having your own if you can. Of course, everybody can't have that. Some people are happy there. It is what it is. But in general, the so-called black man should be trying to work on having his own. When you get up, you should be motivated about what you're going to do to build up your own, not the next person's something. All right?
And it would work against us.
Let me tell you this. You're absolutely right. As an African-American man or person in this country should not be burdened with walking around as the angry black person who could be then stereotyped that way all the time, constantly indignant. So allow me in this instance, my brother, to stand up and
to speak for you, because I have your best interest at heart. I always have. Me and my people have been running the NAACP since its inception, and we still control you. We still control you niggers. I mean, you wonderful black people. So let me speak for you.
Be indignant for you, if I must. And that goes for everyone, every conscientious person in this country who sees this kind and
if you guys were truly as quote-unquote conscientious as you act like you are, you would not be encouraging these so-called black women to have performed 15 million abortions in the last 45 years. We know for a fact that the super liberal Caucasian is the main entity that likes to promote abortions amongst so-called black women. You guys are the main ones who like to promote the so-called black woman being separated from the so-called black man and not honoring him as her head. You guys are the main ones who do that. So if you truly were a conscientious objector to a lot of the ills of this society, that's what you'd be focusing on. Not Eric Reid having to piss into a cup after a game where he's getting paid 7 figures. I don't give a shit about what Eric Reid is going through.
And this is mild compared to real injustices, but who sees this injustice in broad daylight, it is incumbent upon us all to be indignant about it. And I am.
Okay.
Allegedly.
Thank you.
Appreciate both of you. In layman's terms, you're saying that the NFL's waiting for Eric.
Look at Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith knows that Max Kellerman is full of shit.
For Eric Reid to mess up, and they continue to make news where they sound tone deaf.
Well, I have news for you, Malik Karam, because as we can see, you like wearing black on the outside and you like having black on the inside too. But at the end of the day, this life, this society, this reality is always waiting for so-called black men to quote-unquote mess up. It's a part of life. That's a part of the debt slave system that we live in. Okay? They assume that the so-called black man is going to mess up. But it's only so long that we can keep talking about the quote-unquote system and we keep succumbing to the ills and the traps of the system. Once you're aware that you're living in a system that is set up to take advantage of you, you're culpable as well when you allow yourself to be taken advantage of. That's the bottom line. Even a rat will adjust to the type of ways that people will attempt to trap it. And that's a fact. If you ask an exterminator about rats, he'll tell you that a rat is one of the most intelligent creatures on the planet. It's very difficult to trap a horde of rats the same way because they will learn based on how other rats in the horde have been trapped or killed to no longer approach that same trap. So you have to diversify your traps. So once again, so-called black man, we just can't keep blaming the system when we know that the system is set up against us. We have to utilize a greater deal of intelligence, insight, and utilize perspicacity, man. We have to be focused. We got to be keenly aware. But anyway, none of us are perfect, brothers. Life happens. We have to adjust. So peace.